Hi there, Cynthia here with Productivity Partners. And today I want to talk about the leader's role in creating a healthy culture and what they can do in this day and age to help their managers with managing a remote workforce. And in my work with culture, I know that there are 4 dimensions to a culture: trust, communication, alignment, and accountability. And I'm going to touch on those a little bit in this video. I'm going to start with how you can help your manager in this day and age, because managers are getting very anxious around the issue of supervising a staff that they can't see, supervising a staff that works from home, getting their performance to be the best it can be without being intrusive or difficult or unknowing. And part of the reason for that is I've seen an awful lot of posts around the questions around how do you supervise a remote team? How do you work with the autonomy that work from home people are afforded? And there's a lot of anxiety going on around that in our culture surveys. So there's three ways in which you can help your manager prepare for this particular type of supervision. Keep in mind that if they were micromanagers all the time before now, then they will have a lot of difficulty with it and may need more feedback and coaching. If they were managers that did not exhibit micromanagement, they are still anxious and concerned. That's certainly what our assessments tell us. So sensitivity and kindness is an important thing, but here's 3 things that you can think about. The first thing you want to tell them to do is be proactive in creating a communication template with their staff. Explain to them up front something like, we're going to have staff meetings every Monday at 10 o'clock. They'll last 45 minutes. That's the place to bring your questions. I will have some questions of my own, and let's keep that as a standing meeting. I'd also like to have a wrap-up meeting on Friday between 4 and 4:30 or something like that. Some very clear method of how you want to communicate with them. And this can include not only meetings, but letting them know that from time to time you might call to see how they're doing, but you're also very much needing to do your own work, and the way that you've set it up for yourself is you do priority work in the morning and you do meetings and administrative work and other types of work in the afternoon. That's an example. Help them help your manager know it's okay to communicate that they can ask how the employee is doing. They also need to let the employee know what works for them. Second thing you can help them with is help them set clear expectations. It's certainly okay to say, what I really need is to have this budget project done by Friday. But then teach them to ask the employee at the end of that, how do you feel about that? Is that going to work for you? Get some feedback. Get the employee to tell you, yes, I can do that by Friday, or you know what, I'm not sure I can do it by Friday, but let me offer an alternative and see if I can get it to you Thursday because Friday I have another meeting. Something like that. But to be very clear about their expectations and then ask for information back. The third area that a manager can help, that a leader can help their managers with, is to encourage their employees, to encourage their staff to be proactive in sharing how things are going for them, or be proactive in sharing alternatives if something doesn't work for them. That when they have this communication back and forth, the communication doesn't need to be a lot more of communication. The communication needs to be far more specific than it has been in the past. This is a recurring theme. If you give vague information out, you're going to get vague information back. Be clear and concise with the managers, and the managers, in fact, should be just as clear and concise with their staff as well. Being specific is our friend. All right, so those are ways in which you can help your manager. Now what I would like to talk a little bit about is how leaders can continue or begin to create more of a healthy culture considering everything that's going on. In the area of communication, I think that leaders need to be very clear and very concise about the message that they deliver, either to the executive team or to a staff-wide meeting. Clear and concise is where it's at. Again, vague begets vague. So mean what you say and say what you mean. The second part of communication is listening. And if you've worked with me before, you know that I say listening is more important than talking. Listen to what folks are saying. They're anxious, they're frustrated, they're in pain, some of them. They don't know where they're going. It's been a real stressor the last few months. For you as the leader, and as the executive, but also for the other members of the staff. So for communication, be clear and concise, and make sure you listen wholeheartedly. In the area of trust, of course, we know trust is earned. You need to be sincere when you talk to people, and they need to be able to feel that sincerity. Another area where people can begin to trust you is if you are both reliable and consistent. Those are two different things. Being reliable means you do what you say you're going to do. So let's say you're going to have an all-staff meeting on the second Wednesday of every month. Make sure that that's what you have. Make sure that you protect that time on your calendar. Being consistent means that you do it every time you say you're going to do it. So the second Wednesday of every month, people will be looking to make sure that you're doing what you said you were going to do. So again, being sincere and being reliable and consistent. Because in times like this, leaders are looked upon to help people feel better by being reliable and consistent, all right? The third area is alignment, and this is where I talk about goals and priorities. Goals and priorities are important with or without a pandemic, obviously. They drive strategic plans, but goals and priorities shift, and they move, and they shift. The goal may shift. There may be a nuance of a shift and not a big shift. Priorities may shift a lot. And that, again, was happening before the pandemic, but now it's very important. So be very clear by visiting goals and priorities, maybe on a weekly or every other week basis, and then sharing that information. Another area that's critical and is in fact the role of leaders is core values. Is your organization following their core values? They have purpose and vision and mission, but are they following core values? I will tell you that I have a client who's an executive who oversees a company of about 75 people. And when the pandemic hit, he reached out and to staff members just kind of randomly one at a time. And one of the questions that he asked was, can you give me an example of how you have worked with or demonstrated our company's core values? This wasn't the lead question. This was after they had had a discussion about what was going on in their lives and how they were feeling. But after that, eventually, the last question he asked was, how are you demonstrating core values? It does two things to ask this. Number one, it reminds staff that core values are important. And number two, it sends the message that the leader is very serious about core values. And that, of course, is basically what drives your organization. If people are motivated by core values, their behavior will be motivation and will demonstrate that. The last area is accountability. You know how I talked about goals and priorities in alignment? For accountability, it's roles and goals, right? It's make sure that everybody is in their lane, and maybe their lane shifted, maybe it changed, maybe you need to have a discussion about roles and goals. But make sure that we're, again, touching base on that on a regular basis, because it shifts and it moves, and it might have to if we're working on our culture. Second thing is, it's important for you and your leaders and your managers to have tools that can track how we're doing when it comes to accountability. The tools and the measurement aren't about punishing someone. The tools and the measurement are to show you where we have taken our eye off the ball, where there's an area that all of a sudden seems to be more important, and we have not shifted our focus to that. So it's about tracking progress so you know where you're at, so you can shift if you need to shift. Because that's what organizations do. They don't shift on a dime, but they certainly may need to shift during a time like this. Those are all my suggestions for leaders and managers and executive teams, and it is important to show empathy and compassion. This is a difficult time for everyone, and although we have moved from storming to forming to some type of norming around it, we still have a long way to go. And I think the best thing I can tell you is be open, show some vulnerabilities. Nobody expects everybody to know everything, but be kind to one another, because that compassion and that empathy will go a long way to helping everybody feel that they are human beings that are going through the same thing at the same time, and that they feel they'll get to the end of it. All right? Okay, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. I hope this helped. I wish you truly healthy cultures. and it takes everybody to work on that to get it to happen. So be well. If you need to reach me, you know how to do that. Cynthia at propartnersinc.com. Take care, everyone. Till next month.